can you make some changes so that 30 days later you take your shirt off or put on a bikini? Like, you could tell that I did something. Yes, you can.
I don't want people to think that it's not possible. I think it's very much so possible. And again, the healthier you are, the healthier your metabolism is, okay? The higher amount of calories you can consume and not put body fat on, the more muscle mass you have on your body, I think the more dramatic this can be.
You don't want to go too extreme with that either, right? Because then we're in a predicament where we're not fueling our muscle. We're not preserving muscle at that point too, which you want to be able to preserve if that's the allure of it, is to be able to, highlight your muscles more and reduce body fat, not necessarily overall weight.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can visibly change your body in 30 days. That's right, 30-day transformation. All right.
Preface.
The hustle.
I know. Now that we've hooked them.
Big asterisk. Big asterisk here.
First off, there's a reason why we don't do episodes like this, because this really doesn't really apply to the vast majority of people out there. It's really a terrible strategy or thought process for most people who are looking to lose 20 pounds or improve their health or fitness. This whole I'm going to do everything I can for 30 days sets you up for failure afterwards, almost 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So I want to be really, really clear about that. There are some potential applications.
Yeah, that being said, if you consistently work out, your metabolism is in a very healthy place.
Now, what do you mean by healthy?
Well, a good amount of calories for your body weight. So if you're a 130 to 150 pound female and you're eating 1,700 plus calories, you're in a pretty good place.
Right.
If you're 1,500 calories and maintaining your weight there, you probably need to focus on reverse dieting.
So you want to have at least some room to go down.
That's the point. Because one of the things one of the tips in here is going to be restrict calories, and we're probably going to recommend somewhere between the 500 to 1,000 mark. And so if you're going to recommend that, they need to be somewhere in a healthy place so that you're not now, starving the body of nutrients because you're so low of calories. So that's important.
And also having a fundamental sort of baseline of training experience. Right. So that's definitely, because if you are going to really condense this goal down to a limited amount of time of 30 days, this is where somebody in that situation where I'm pretty experienced in the gym. Maybe I've taken a little bit of time off, but I can do these compound lists. I can do a lot of things that'll contribute towards that at a more intensified kind of pace.
And we just did an episode, for the people that feel like, oh, well, what's this? This is a worthless episode for me. Well, if you feel like that after us prefacing it with that, go over and watch the New Year's one that we did. What was the title of that one, Doug? Whatever the title of the New Year's episode we did, I think is an excellent place to start for a majority of people just getting started on their journey, or one of our reverse dieting ones. But for somebody who's, healthy and been training consistently, and they're like, all right, I want to turn it up the next 30 days. We've listed some of the, I think, key rocks to focus on in order to be successful at that.
Yeah, and this is considering you're not. So the problem is that the person who tends to get attracted to this, oh my God, I can visibly.
It's usually the wrong person.
It's the beginner. Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to get in shape. This is how I want to start. That's the wrong person. This also is going to be kind of a waste of time if you have a lot of body fat to lose. Yeah. You're not going to be able to do much in a month to visibly change your body with, by doing anything if you have 30 pounds to lose. But if you're relatively lean, you can make some changes in a month to where you can actually tell when you look in the mirror. So that episode that Adam was referring to was 1967. So 1967, that'll give you better long-term advice. But that being said, if you're relatively lean, you've got some experience, you know how to work out, your metabolism, you're eating a good amount of calories, you kind of know what your maintenance is at, by the way, that's also important, then can you make some changes so that 30 days later, you take your shirt off or put on a bikini, you could tell that I did something. Yes, you can. Now, I do want to be clear, the most body fat, pure body fat, because you can lose more on the scale, it doesn't mean lost body fat. The most body fat you'll probably lose in this month, if you do this right, that you should aim for is 4 pounds, maybe 6 pounds at the most. I know some people say 2 pounds a week. 8 pounds is pushing it. But I'd say 4 to 6 pounds. How do you guys feel about that number?
I would challenge that. And the way I would challenge that is the healthier you are and the better metabolism and more muscle mass you have, the more dramatic that number would be. So, I was cutting 10, 15 pounds of fat in a month's time when I was competing, but I also had a roaring metabolism, had a ton of muscle on my body. I had a very high caloric intake.
Yeah, but you would be an outlier though, right? That wouldn't be the average.
No, I'm not. That's what I just said. Yeah. I said I'm not, but I don't want people to think that it's not possible. I think it's very much so possible. And again, the healthier you are, the healthier your metabolism is, okay? The higher amount of calories you can consume and not put body fat on, the more muscle mass you have on your body, I think the more dramatic this can be. Yeah. I think your target is a good, safe place that's smart and healthy for the average person who just is a, say weekend warrior, I guess, or like,
they work out, but they're not
relatively
like
consistent, but not like, but if you're pretty hardcore in this, I mean, you can move the needle.
Now you just said something. So what's going to be vitally important, because we're dealing with such a short window of time, is going to be consistency. This means if you have to do everything right,
no room for error
all the time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can forget the 30-day target.
Every screw has to be tight.
Yeah, and then you can give yourself a 60, 90-day target, 120-day target. But if you look at 30 days, like one weekend out with your friends doing whatever.
So this is where I do like the 30-day type of quote unquote challenge, or the like doing an episode like this. It is fun to go like, hey, for 30 days, I'm gonna sacrifice a lot. I'm gonna sacrifice the other things in health, relationship, going out with my friends and taking the weekend off of this, or sleeping in on these days. Like, this is like kind of cool to measure and see, okay, if I really say I'm all about making a change physically, what can I actually accomplish if everything else falls after that goal for 30 days? This is what it would look like, in my opinion.
All right, today's giveaway is MAPS Anabolic. This is the first MAPS program, the most popular MAPS program, great for building muscle, boosting the metabolism, burning body fat. Here's how you can enter to win. Leave a comment below this video in the first 24 hours that we drop this episode. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Do all those things. And if we like your comment, we'll notify you in the comment section that you won free access to MAPS Anabolic. We also put together these 3 workout program bundles. All of them give you up to 9 months of planned workouts, every single one of them. They're also all $300 or more off, so huge discounts. If you're interested in taking advantage of the January special, just click on the link at the top of the description below. All right, here comes the show. All right, so step 1, obviously you're gonna have to cut calories, and they're gonna have to come down below your maintenance. So maintenance is how many calories you need to consume for your body to stay the same. So if you know what that number is, then you wanna cut between 500 to 1,000 calories below that. Now, who goes to 1,000, who goes to 500? The higher your calories are, the more you can go down. If you're at 1,700 calories, I would not recommend you cut 1,000 calories. Now you're left with 700 calories. That's not a good place. But if you're at 3,000 calories or 3,500 calories, you're a big dude and you got a lot of muscle and a fast metabolism, can you cut 1,000 calories below maintenance just for a 30-day period? You can. So it's 500 to 1,000. And what this does is when you go below maintenance, now your body's forced to tap into its energy reserves during this 30-day period. This is what causes the body fat. If you don't do this part, none of the other stuff we say is going to make a big difference. You have to have that calorie cut in order to see the fat loss.
And you don't want to go too extreme with that either, right? Because then we're in a predicament where we're not fueling our muscle. We're not preserving muscle at that point too, which you want to be able to preserve. If that's the allure of it, is to be able to, highlight your muscles more and reduce body fat, not necessarily overall weight.
I actually would, the way I would structure this would be, if it's a 30-day goal, I would actually figure out what's the lowest I would want to allow myself on the 30th day, and I would kind of reverse engineer that, meaning
like you're not going to go like that right out the gates.
Right. And I'm not going to pick the number and then stay at that for 30 days. Every week I'm going to adjust this.
Yeah.
So every week I'm going to go a little bit lower. So let's say I'm at where I was when I was competing, 5,000 calories, and I'm in 30 days. I don't want to go lower than, let's say, 2,500. I'm going, okay, so how would I want that to look? Okay, I'm going to go 1,000 calories and then 500 and then 500. Like that's, and every week I'm going to do that. And I'm actually, and I hope you don't mind, but I want to pair this with what I like to do at the same time, which is your 8th tip, which is the steps. And so I'm actually dropping about 500 to 1,000, depending on the week, every week. And then I'm also increasing steps.
And this is
together.
This because what that does, just to be clear, what that does by increasing activity is you're moving the calorie burn target up. So now you have the deficit where you want. So let's say you cut 700 calories, but now you're burning an extra 300 calories. Now you're 1,000 calorie deficit.
Right.
So you can do it through activity and through nutrition.
Right. And I like doing both of them at the same time. I feel like I get more of a dramatic response, and I don't have to drop calories so hard and still create that deficit. I don't have to do crazy hours of activity. I just need to increase my movement and be tracking it, paying attention to it. So I think, and I know you put numbers on here with the steps with I think you did 10, 12. Yeah, you did 10, 12, 14, 16,000. What always happens when we do an episode like this, someone's like, well, what do I do if I'm already at 14,000 steps? Okay, so it's
just go up 2,000 each time.
Yeah, what is that, like 20% or so, increase whatever it is, 20% week over week from where you're currently at.
Well, let's talk about the steps then, since we're talking about that now. The recommendation here, and this is general, again, if you're higher than this already, then you just add in a similar fashion. But for those of you that aren't hitting these, the first week, you're aiming for 10,000 steps a day. The second week, you're aiming for 12,000. The third week, 14,000, and then the last week, 16,000 steps. So you're increasing your step count every single week. This is going to take the place of cardio. This is better than cardio because steps are throughout the day. It's easier to stay consistent with this type of activity. It doesn't tend to cause the metabolic adaptation in the same way, and it's easier. Now, can you do these steps on a treadmill? You can. But ideally you do them throughout the day and you're just trying to stay active throughout the day and using a treadmill as a way to play catch up.
So I love that you added that, because that's how I used to use the treadmill, was to play catch up if I didn't get there. So the goal would be, I wear the Fitbit or Apple Watch or a tool to be tracking. I'm mindful all day about where my steps are averaging. And then if I see that I'm behind and I don't have time to maybe go somewhere, or I don't see where I'm going to be able to insert that into my day, or maybe I know I'm about to sit down and podcast or do something for 5-6 hours, I might go, okay, I'm gonna get on the treadmill and I'm gonna walk until I get to a certain amount. Because, and if once you do this enough, you start to get you start to figure out your own behaviors of what normal days look like, where you'll land, what it looks like if you add a lunch walk for 20 minutes. Like, that's what I love about goals like this.
It's very insightful.
Is more about what you learn about yourself and your behavior, so you can become more cognizant of these things that happen when you're not doing this 30-day challenge of like, oh, I've had one of those days where it's been like, I need to probably go for a walk. You get home,
your natural tendency, I want to sit down, I want to relax, I want to kind of wind down. And so when you start paying attention to like not sitting and not like doing some of those things, like those habits you normally have, it really does like increase just naturally the amount of activity of the overall day.
Yeah, the best ways to hit these are walking after meals, housework, parking farther in the parking lot, using the bathroom that's far away at work. Like these little things actually make up a big difference when it comes to these steps. Like I know that for me, when I would track something like this, if I was at the grocery store and I had to go to this over there to find that, I'd take the long way. I'd park further away. And it would make like an extra 1,000 steps a day.
Way less noticeable that way.
It is. It's way less noticeable. It's much more of a lifestyle thing. Yeah. And I would burn more body fat that way than by doing a concentrated hour of cardio. All right, next is, this one's, again, a diet related one, which is, since you're cutting calories, you want to take a majority of these calorie cuts from carbohydrates for the most part. Why? Because proteins and fats are more satiating, and because we're looking for visible changes in the mirror, carbohydrates tend to cause more water retention, or should I say in the reverse, cutting carbohydrates tends to get rid of water. So burning body fat and getting your body to lose a little bit of water tends to create the illusion of being even leaner. And carbs tend to be easier to cut without sacrificing, again, proteins, fats, and that kind of stuff. They tend to be easier to cut. And it takes you to the next point, which is...
I think the simple point of this is just that they're not essential. The other two are. So I'm going to keep the other two in the diet the longest and the most possible. If we're doing a cut and we're trying to do it in the healthiest way possible, the things that I want to probably keep where my body's used to is my fats and proteins, because they're necessary, and carbohydrates are not necessary at all. So the first place I'm going to start to pull or manipulate is carbohydrates. And I also think, to the point you're making, it makes it visually better. I also notice the difference with my appetite. Like, so if I keep my fats and proteins relatively high and I only take the calories from carbohydrates, I actually find it easier to restrict from the foods, versus if I take away it from fat or proteins, I find it like you still have those cravings, where I think this helps in the craving department also.
Yes, 100%. And this takes us to the next one, which is to eat only unprocessed foods. And you got to be very consistent with this. Now, why? Is it because processed foods promote fat gain? Not inherently, but rather processed foods make us overeat. And since you cannot mess up even one day because it's a 30-day period, you want to put all the chips in your favor. And I don't mean potato chips. I mean like chips on a betting table. So
got excited there for a second.
So you want to eat only unprocessed foods. So every meal should be made up of whole natural foods where it's one ingredient. So fruits, vegetables, grains that are not super processed, like like rice, corn, potato. There would be some good starches, and then your meats, your proteins, and that kind of stuff. Only unprocessed food, you'll find that you're going to find more satiety. It'll be easy to stay consistent with that calorie cut that we talked about early on. Without that, in processed foods, you may find it to be really challenging.
Yeah, I just think if you're going to be successful and you're going to like do this hardcore 30 days, becoming aware of everything you're consuming, half of part of that awareness comes from prepping. Prepping, weighing, measuring, getting it all set out, and eating all whole foods. And I've shared this on the podcast before too, which what I can't share with you is the science to support this thing that I definitely saw happen. Was, I mean, even when calories were controlled and I had a diet that had all these, bars and shakes and processed foods that I allowed in the diet, versus when I went all whole foods, it presented a different look. Now we're splitting hairs, the difference, but I saw a difference in it, and I found it easier to control the cravings. Eat like protein bars, even though they fall in the category of healthy, they also would promote me wanting to have more of them. Yeah. So versus me having a small serving of meat and vegetables, that would satiate me and not kick up the craving to where I want again. Where if I'd have a bar, a lot of times I have a bar, I'm like, oh, I want another one. And it's easy to justify, oh, this is a healthy thing, let me do one more.
I think part of that has to do with the accuracy of when you weigh a piece of meat and vegetables and fruit and potato or whatever, you're going to get pretty accurate with the calories. When you look at a package of something that's processed, the FDA actually allows like 10 to 20%.
They're pretty loose
off.
about it.
20%.
So it says, 100 calories. You could have as much as 120 calories. If it's 200 calories, you can have as much as 240 calories. So I think that's probably where it mostly comes from.
Yeah, definitely. It's I got to highlight the prep value of that, because if you're reaching, like this is where like there's no real margin for error there. And if you have a day where you're hungry and you get like a craving and you're between and you're traveling and there's only gas station available, whatever it is, like, and you're not prepared and you don't have that food accessible, you're going to compromise it.
Well, and to add to what you said, Sal, about the accuracy of the number, with FDA allowing it to be 20% off, I think you would be silly to think that food companies that fall in the health category, that are trying to attract people because they're quote unquote low calorie, are not going to take advantage of all 19.9% that they can to sell it.
I bet you they're the most inaccurate. I bet you, because health foods are trying to sell low calories.
100%.
Yeah. So they're the most inaccurate.
You have to believe that. You have to believe, if we are selling this product to people as low calorie, and the FDA already allows us this 20% wiggle room, we are going to take advantage of that entire 19.9%.
Yeah, because your consumer cares so much about how many calories in there.
That's right. And like you said, something that is 200 or 300 calories, the difference of it getting to say 40 to 50 calories less is a big difference of you going like, oh, wow, that's really low.
Yeah, that's below 200 calories. Yeah, it's actually 240 calories.
That's right. That's not bad at all.
You eat three of those.
It tastes good and it fills me up.
Yeah, you eat three of those, it's an extra 150 calories a day.
That's right.
Which will definitely throw you off.
That's right.
All right, the next one is to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or more. I'd like to tell people when they're doing something like this to aim for more, because at least if they do fall below it, they're hitting that target of 1 to 1. Now, this is extremely satiating. extremely satiating. When you eat a gram of protein per pound of body weight, you will find your appetite to be gone.
It's a bit of a chore. Like, I think people don't realize, like, once they start really upping the protein to that level, I mean, you have to actively eat your way through some of that sometimes if you're used to balancing that with a higher amount of carbs.
Yeah, and this also is better for metabolic adaptation because a high protein diet, you're less likely to pare muscle down. Anytime you cut calories, you always run that risk of paring muscle down, losing a little bit of muscle in this process. Well, we want to visibly change how we look. That means we want to keep that muscle. Muscle looks good. And a high protein, low calorie diet is more likely to maintain muscle. Studies are quite clear on this than a lower protein, low calorie diet. Even if the calories are the same, the high protein component protects muscle, which will also protect to a degree your metabolism. Because what you don't want to do at the end of this 30-day period is be so bad. And even though we're selling this episode, my integrity still prevents me from telling you to do things that are going to set you up so terribly for failure later on. Yeah. So I want you to protect your metabolism.
Well, yeah, I think we've done enough of that, right? Where we explain to people there's a clear difference when we present information and we're talking about what is healthy, what is best for you, what's a good strategy for this, for long-term longevity. And then when we have to do something where we're saying like, okay, you got 30 days. Yeah. What are you going to do for 30 days? Forget what is best for that person or not. It's like, what are the tips that you're going to give? Yeah, and obviously
laser focused.
You are going to want to lean on the higher end, even flirting with maybe a little too much of protein because you don't want to risk going under that because you're not getting the potential maximum benefits of protecting muscle or even potentially building muscle. So right. I want to keep my client or this person that we're this avatar we're building at that high threshold of protein intake.
Yes. Next up would be to hit your fiber targets for your body weight. You want to hit your fiber targets because fiber is also very satiating. Fiber's up there, not quite as much as protein, but it's also very satiating. And also a diet that contains an adequate amount of fiber tends to promote fat loss through other somewhat unknown mechanisms. Some people believe it has to do with the microbiome.
I would think digestive. I would think it has to do with digestion. No?
Yeah, maybe there's more calories burned processing than other types of foods, but fiber's pretty clear. It's pretty good for you. High fiber foods that I like to recommend are things like vegetables and berries. Berries are a phenomenal source, like raspberries and blackberries. A great source of fiber and relatively low calorie. That was your tip, Adam.
That's my staple.
Low calorie, low glycemic. Yeah.
I actually really didn't eat a lot of any other fruit during prep than berries. I would rotate through all the berries because of they're the biggest bang for your buck, as far as being the lowest calorie for the most amount of antioxidants and fiber that you get from it. So I feel like you're getting the most benefit from it without all the extra calories. And I think they taste good. I mean, blueberries and blackberries and raspberries and strawberries and they're all relatively close as far as like which one's better. And I would just do a mixed bowl of berries to get all my fiber in this way, and
easily digestible too. Sometimes fiber is like can cause gastro upset in some people, especially insoluble fiber.
Well, especially if you're doing something like raw spinach or something like that, right? So
yep. Next up would be to introduce one higher calorie day a week. Now, what do I mean by higher calorie? This is where you're going to eat closer to what your maintenance is. Now, why are we doing this? This will probably, not always, but probably mitigate the metabolic slowdown that's almost inevitable when you cut your calories. Introducing a higher calorie day tends to do that. Also, psychologically, this is going to give you just enough flexibility to help you stay consistent. Hopefully, that's the goal. And it can also give you the fuel and energy for some of your harder workouts because you are going to be working out during this period of time. So if you have 7 days, if you look at your 7-day diet, and you're at 1,000 calorie deficit, maybe make one of those like a 200 calorie deficit. So the calories are much higher.
This is not a cheat day.
No, I didn't. That's why I didn't say that.
Yeah, we have to highlight that because sometimes when people look at that, if I'm upping my calories, what's the difference? If I introduce maybe some processed foods in there, like I kind of get something that I had cravings for. No, this is just to really stick with the plan of what you have in terms of your macronutrients and the types of quality of food and the whole foods. We're just upping that resource a bit more.
Yeah. So mine actually was one high calorie day every 4 days. So I would run a reverse the other way. It would go a high day, and then it would go a medium day, and then it would go low carbohydrate day, and then back to a high. So that was kind of how
now you had so much metabolic flexibility too, because you had so much muscle, right? And you were burning so many calories. I would say what do you think for most people?
Well, I mean, it still lands once a week. 1 every 4 is still once a week. I mean, you're
roughly.
Because on the 8th day would be the second one. It's still roughly once a week. That's just the cycle I ran through. I would cycle my carbohydrates, and I'd have 4 days where I was eating significantly under my caloric maintenance, and then that one day I'd actually go a little bit above maintenance. So whatever I had decided where my maintenance was at, I would go a regular day, or a medium calorie drop, and then a low, very low, and then back to
so in 30 days that'll give you 7 higher calorie days. Once a week will give you 4. So you are doing more in that 30-day period.
Yeah, in a 30-day period.
In a 30-day period, yeah. So I'd say you play around with this a little bit, but if I'm thinking of the average person and where their calories are going to be, and they're probably not going to be like you, I would keep it to 1. But I mean, you could play around with this a little bit. But the problem is you have 30 days. So I don't know if there's that much wiggle room, right, for somebody to kind of.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this goes back to the original statement of the better you are, the better place you are, like metabolically, the more wiggle room that you're going to have, the more you'll build flexibility that you'll be able to play with different days like this. I mean, nothing stops the average person from having, instead of doing my cycle of going, they have, 3 medium low days, 2 very, very low days, and then
that's true.
1 maintenance and a slight surplus. So you can absolutely play with what that looks like. I just found that rotation was a nice rotation.
Yeah, and to be clear, mine would be similar to yours. That's how I tend to do mine. Yeah. All right, next up, let's talk about working out. Lift weights 3 days a week, full body. Now, why are we recommending that? Because you're at a calorie deficit, probably not a good idea to lift weights all the time. Mm-hmm. And 3 days a week full body gives you enough frequency. It tends to focus on compound lifts, and it tends to send a really loud muscle building strength signal, which will minimize the potential muscle loss that can happen during a calorie deficit period. So a full body 3 day a week routine for this 30-day period probably works best. Each workout should focus on 1 exercise per body part and make it compound lift focused. We want most bang for our buck. We're not in the gym to waste time. We also are low energy because the calories are so low, so we're not trying to do a bunch of filler exercises. You want to go in there, you want to squat, you want to press overhead, you want to row, lunge. You want to do those kinds of movements to really maximize the type of work that you're doing.
And if you want to do more, it is on the off days, it's mobility, trigger, and walking.
Yes.
Like that. So
restorative movement.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to hit the weights hard 3 days, full body. And then I want to keep this person moving and active. We only got 30 days, right? And so those other days, we're messing with mobility, walking, and trigger sessions. And I give them a lot of flexibility. Obviously, the one thing I always got to remind people is trigger sessions are not like workouts. They're these small pump, and do 3-4 of those little micro pumping band workouts throughout the day. I'm totally fine with that. Go for a nice walk, do a nice 30-minute to 45-minute mobility session. Stay active and do those types of things on the off day. But as far as, the intensity, the high intensity, weight training, pushing yourself, limit that to, which by the way, sounds counterintuitive. Most people would think,
you do more?
Yeah, most people would think, okay,
check yourself on that.
That's right. And I think that this is a mistake that a lot of people make, is hammering the shit out of themselves 5 to 7 days a week, and then their body's constantly trying to recover from that. It's not adapting and helping you out.
Same in the actual workouts, right? Is the tendency, because we're trying to really accelerate our progress because we got this 30-day window, I'm going to want to keep going to the next exercise, We're not getting adequate rest in between. We change the dynamic of the entire workout from being a strength-driven workout to now a little bit more cardiovascular based. And so we do need that strength signal. We need that signal so we can
build muscle. And you want it to be loud to build muscle. Allow the movement, activity, and the calorie deficit to take care of the fat burning. Yeah. Do not go into your lifting days as I'm trying to burn fat.
No, you're trying to build muscle.
You're trying to build muscle. And so lift to build muscle, stay active, be disciplined on your deficit to make your fat burning. Think of it like that as you approach your working out.
That's a good tip. And then you want to also prioritize sleep every day. One night of missed sleep will wreak havoc on your hormone system, will change your cravings. affect your workouts negatively. So that means for the next 30 days, you're not going to stay up late Friday night and try and sleep in Saturday morning. That is not prioritizing sleep. That's giving yourself jet lag every single week. And that also has negative consequences. So this means every night, go to bed at the same time, and every morning, wake up at the same time. This is not an afterthought, by the way. So if you listen to all these tips, you're like, that sleep part, I'll leave that out.
Yeah.
No, the sleep part is one of the most important tips that we just gave you. Every single night, go to bed at the same time. Every single morning, wake up at the same time. It'll make a huge difference with this particular goal.
This is something where, I made the point when we first started talking about how I like this for like 30 days to be so disciplined that you make a lot of other sacrifices that if I was coaching you towards longevity and health, that I would probably tell you, like, listen, I mean, that's a time you enjoy with your wife on Friday nights. You should go have that dinner out and you guys do those things. Or, you haven't seen a friend that you haven't seen in years, and Saturday you guys get together and you stay up and you have a glass of scotch. I'm going to tell you, you should enjoy that every now. Those things are important to your relationship and your overall health. But here's an example of where, like, have you ever sacrificed all those things for 30 days to make sure you get the most optimal sleep ever, to see how much it actually makes a benefit?
It's also going to bring so much awareness around how much it impacts your life.
That's what I mean. That's why I like this 30-day get after it, like really like give yourself that opportunity to like what if I did turn down these things that I really want to do and these things that I have these temptations, or stay up later to watch a show I really wanted to watch, about like sacrifice that stuff for just 30 days and really make this like disciplined effort to get in bed by a really early time and get really good night's sleep, just to see what kind of impact and how much it can influence this.
You want to know what's funny? Considering the average person, of all of these single steps that we just talked about,
this is one of the hardest.
The one that would make the biggest difference in 30 days would be this one.
It's also one of the hardest. That's why I'm making such a big deal about it, because I know I've trained enough people to know, and I know myself, this is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard to be really, really good every single night about having a routine where you get in the bed, and getting in bed every single night. And if it's 11 or midnight, that's not a good routine. Like getting into bed early so you get a good 8 hours of sleep or more, and you're well rested to get up and start your day and consistently at that time. That's hard to do.
That is. All right. Next, this is the last one. And because we have a 30-day period, so this is not like how you're going to live your entire life, but because the goal is to make the most visible changes in 30 days, that means 0 alcohol, zero junk food, 0 anything that could counter this goal. So that means there's no wiggle room. So we talked about consistency in the beginning. That's it for 30 days. You're not doing any of those things, because all of those things can impact all the other steps that we talked about. You could have some alcohol, now it affects your sleep, now it affects your cravings, now your diet's off, your workout's off, whatever. Do nothing that could be off or that could set you off, and you will see visible changes in 30 days. Look, if you like the show, head over to mindpumpfree.com and check out our guides. We have guides that can help you with almost any health or fitness goal. You can also find all of us on social media. So Justin is on Instagram at mindpumpjustin. Adam is on Instagram at mindpumpadam. And you can find me on Twitter at mindpumpsal. Today, we're going to teach you everything you need to know to build a strong, well-developed chest.
When I think of weak points and areas that I struggled with developing for a really long time, chest was up there with the
it was for me. It was for me for sure. I got more caught up in the weight I could lift versus how I was developing my body.
I think it's one of the most challenging muscles to develop for most people because the form and technique.